Welcome to this episode of Meet the Artist at Framethrower. My name is Ben Kusald, and in this episode, I'll be speaking with Previz mastermind Margaux Durand-Rival. Sorry for the pronunciation there, Margaux. Margaux has helped plan and design some of the most iconic and dynamic action sequences in films as Rogue One, Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, Maleficent, Edge of Tomorrow, and many, many more. She's currently a previous supervisor and partner at Les Androïds Associésand. Sorry for the pronunciation there again. I'm not French. And Margaux is also an expert at the French CNC, a sector of the Ministry of Culture responsible for production and promotion of cinematic and audiovisual arts in France. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Margaux is extremely talented and extremely bright, and I learned a lot from it. Also, if you're an animator looking for a community and feedback, come join us at framethrower.io. Great artists, great vibes, and customized animation player and feedback tools all available at framethrower.io. And now, here's Margaux Durand-Rival. That's pretty cool.
It's amazing. It's just like a big coincidence. France finally managed to get like a proper tax rebate. So now, of course, suddenly work is starting to come to France. It's nice.
Yeah. It's nice that you guys can be closer to family as well.
Yeah. It was important for us, especially since Brexit and stuff like that. It's been. I was happy to leave before that. And with COVID, I'm glad I'm not stuck, in England. And I'm really happy. So the job was a little bit more complicated here than in London, but now it gets exciting, so it's cool.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, I think at one point we're gonna come to the this. At one point, I really want to discuss about the whole thing about previs versus animation.
Sure.
I talked to our friend Leo about that. Leo Recomset about that
Of
quite
course.
a bit, and I had I had a great conversation with Randy Link, who used to be a supervisor at Weta. We talked about it as well.
Cool.
So the issue is, I think what we'll get to is the whole thing about animators looking down on previs a little bit, and I think it may have something to do with as a previs artist, you don't get to own your shot all the time, and
That's true.
But I also think it's a lot of it has to do with animators not knowing the powers of previs and what you can actually do with it.
I think so. Yeah, that's true.
I just wanna get you a little bit angry about it, and we can get back to it later. Because
Sure.
first, I was hoping we could start a little bit with your background. You studied animation at Gobelin, and what's the other school?
Superfocom, yes.
Yeah, Superfocom. Yeah.
Yes, it was mostly at Superfocom because what I did at Gobelin was a Maya training later on.
Okay.
To change software. So I did like a 1 month or 2 months training in Maya. Unfortunately, I was not good enough to learn animation at the Gobelin. I wish, but no. So no, I studied at Superfocom, which is a great animation school, but not as much as Gobelin, of course.
Yeah.
It was nice.
But yeah, Gobelin seems also like, I don't know how it is now, but I remember when I was in school, they pushed for a very certain style, and the level was very high. So
it was really hard to get into it, and I think it's still the case.
Yeah.
But so many candidates, and such a few spots, and I didn't do any animation before animation school, so it's funny, but you need to be already a pretty good animator to get in. So it's I couldn't. I just didn't do it.
Well, you did pretty good anyway, like, because after. So what was it? Was it after Super Infconf and Gobelin that you went straight into working in commercials?
I just after Superfocom, I did a Gobelin training later because I used to work in 3ds Max, and it's funny because it's something that is still very used in France because we have, for some reason, there is a lot of game animation as well. And in commercials, in all companies, they used to love 3ds Max because it was very, actually, you can do a lot of stuff really quickly in 3ds Max that are a little bit more painful in Maya. And so I did work on commercials for quite a while, like 3 years.
Yeah.
It's funny, you know, we have a lot of small companies in France that do a lot of commercials and music video, and it was this very creative hub of you know, doing things very quickly, and a lot of actually creative commercials that were pretty good. So it was perfect to learn. You know, just you get used to this quick pace, and you do a lot of different projects, and you change companies as well. So I really enjoyed that to a certain point.
Yeah, I think a lot of us who spent a lot of time in VFX would be jealous of that model of quick projects and fast turnarounds, and I'm sure it was stressful at times as well. But yeah,
it can be.
Yeah. Did you animate on those only, or like was it?
I was like a junior animator, and the thing is, it's when you are on small companies like that, you also do the layout and previs, and this is where I actually discovered that, you know, there is something really cool about designing the shots and working with a director. And I think this is, I remember because I used to work a lot with a director called Edouard Salier, which I really admire. And he used to do like some super nice commercials for Nike or things like that. And he was also doing a lot of really cool music videos for Massive Attack.
Oh,
and
nice.
Yeah, and we did a video together. I mean, I worked on one of his projects for a band called Justice. It was a French electro band, and we did this music video called Civilization, and it was like a full CGI video clip with like statues falling and buffaloes running everywhere. And it was so fun. We designed the whole thing, you know, in a room with like a few artists, and he was sitting next to us, and we were designing shots and, you know, throwing ideas everywhere. And then at some point I jumped to animation, and I was animating the buffaloes, and he was sitting next to me and looking, you know, at me moving like one small controller and checking my animation. And it was like, this is so boring. It was so much fun before, you know, when we were designing the shots. And I just like, you know, I realized, I was like, yeah, you're right. It was so much fun like a month earlier when we were designing the shots together. And this is when I thought, oh, maybe Previz is not that bad.
Did you have a preconceived notion about Previz as well that before that?
No, it's funny because it was, especially in France, you know, we didn't know that it was like a job. And it was more like because on my student movie, I did do a lot of layout and camera animation. And I think I just had an interest, you know, and an appeal for cameras. And, you know, I love cinema, I love references, I love framing shots. And it all came together like suddenly, you know, it's funny. Sometimes you try something by mistake and you're like, hey, I'm not bad at it. You know, It's just a surprise for everyone and for myself, you know. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not bad at this. And because I didn't have like a very, very intense animation background, I was struggling to go into details into animation because I never had like a proper mentor or like proper course. And for me, suddenly I felt much more comfortable doing like, you know, quick blocking and, you know, the first rough pass and being really efficient and being able to just start from scratch and over again. And I was happy not to go into too much details because I was just not, you know, I don't know if I wasn't good at it, I never had like a big opportunity to learn, basically.
But so, I feel like that also sounds like you already knew that your strengths were elsewhere, like with the whole designing of the shots.
I discovered it, like you know, not by mistake, but you know, by you know, the fact that I was just doing this job as well, and suddenly I was like, oh, actually, I'm much better at this than just animation, and I'm just enjoying it much more.
Yeah, and then eventually you landed at Third Floor in London. And we met through our mutual friend Leo Rechamsat. And at Third Floor it was like very purely Previz. That's what they did. And how did you because it was also a bigger productions. So did you still get to play around as you did on the small ones, or how did it change?
Actually, I was really surprised because when I had this opportunity to move to London, I wanted to come and to be an animator in London, but clearly I didn't have the level and there was not a lot of animator position available when I wanted to move. But a friend of mine who used to work on Gravity told me that the third floor was opening his office in London and was looking for Previz animator, and I was like, oh, maybe that could be interesting to try that, and make it my job. Why not? And actually, I got hired the same day than Leo, and we started together. We were only like 5 at the office, and I really loved it. It's funny because it's even if it's big, you still have this opportunity to sometimes meet the director and play with him and just work with him over your shoulder, and even on big projects, not on all of them, but it happens, and it's really, really creative, really, really creative.
Just from looking, because at the time I was at DNEC, and that was my junior days as well. But there was a lot of motion capture and a lot of animating the same things, and it, even though it was a huge learning experience, it could become a little bit tedious at times. And then looking, like, just hearing about what you guys were doing, it was so dynamic, and there were so many different projects, and they seemed to happen so fast, and you got to go on set sometimes as well, which I know wasn't always great, but it sounded great. From like how were those experiences working on set with how was that did you see that as a like, was that a good experience for you working on set?
Yeah, it was really like a it's a big word to say, like a revelation, but suddenly you're not part of this group of people working in the dark for like, I don't know, 15 hours a day, and suddenly you're part of the filmmaking experience. And because I had this love of filmmaking as well, and not only animation, suddenly I was like, oh, okay, I'm part of this, and I feel like I'm part of this, and what I'm doing is actually useful for the teams. And the only part that we didn't like is that most of us had to commute a lot to go to the studio. But otherwise, when you are there, when you are on set, it's so cool. I mean, everyone loves it. It's just to be able to see actually the result of your work, and to see the actors, and to see the costumes and everything is it's really like a big plus for me. It made a big difference. It was the reason why I love this job even more.
Do you remember? Is that because I remember Leo told me about one of his experiences on. It was one of the Mission Impossible movies where he got to design this car spinning and the camera going over, and it was like he showed me the shot afterwards, and also in the movie it's an amazing shot, and he animated it. And do you have a similar experience of something where you felt like this is something I did, and it's in the movie, and it's very direct?
Yeah, I mean. That's funny because it's actually a lot of moments where you can see shot by shot your work in the final movie, and there is some moments where it's funny because we're talking about Mission Impossible, and we designed with Leo this whole underwater sequence on this movie.
Nice.
And Tom Cruise is going diving at some point in a tank or whatever, and this is exactly shot by shot the previous, because it was such a complicated shoot that they had to follow what we did from point A to point B, and that's really a case where you're watching it, you're like, hey, that's us, that's our job. And on Rogue One we had moments like that as well. I remember designing some shots, and so sometimes you design it at the last minute before they have to render a trailer for the next day, and the next day you see the shots, it's exactly the same, because of course they didn't have the time to change anything. So it's really rewarding because you are that's it's going to I'm going a little bit fast to your other question about animation versus Previz, but it's a lot of animators told me like, it's not your it's not exactly your shot in the movie, but I'm like, but I have sequences in the movie. You know, sometimes we have sequences, and it's not all pixels for sure, but we designed it, we created it with the director, and we felt like we were part of it. And I remember so many animators telling me that they were frustrated because someone would say, "Oh, here is the previs, just match it." And they're like, "We hate you guys because you clearly designed this shot in like half a day, and it's cool, but you know, it's like it's never gonna work properly, and the director wants it now, and we have to follow it, and we can't propose anything else." I'm like, yeah, fair enough. I get it.
That's a really good point. What you just said, that as an animator you may have shots, but as a previous artist you have sequences. It's like it's about the filmmaking of it, and you get to figure out the whole sequence, how it plays out, and and if you want to get into the pixels of it as an animator, it's like nobody's like we show all these super like these high res and beautiful renders of our shots with lighting and compositing and effects and all these other elements, and it makes the animation look like something that is like, it makes it look a lot better, so in a way there's always going to be that cooperation. And I think what animators tend to lose, I think we should just open it now, Margaux. That's fine. We're here.
Let's go for it.
No, I think what we tend to lose, and I used to think the same, is the ownership. But as a previous artist, you design, and you it's like you play with the world in which animation can happen. And when you're too focused on the animation, you forget the power of just moving a camera a bit, or like a nice composition, or
I totally get your point. And it's funny because sometimes I have to remind myself when I'm doing previs that it's not about the animation only. It's about everything. Like, you tell a story with everything that you said, with your camera, with your lighting, and the animation, and it's just part of the package. But it's not only about animation. And I think that's what I like about this job compared to animation, is there is not like one is better than the other. I think it's really a different mindset. It's like, for me, the best comparison would be doing concept art and storyboard. It's like, or sketches. And in Previz we do sketches.
Yeah.
And it's just different. It's like, you know, you need to be able to start from scratch, like, you know, several times, and just give up everything. And you do it in animation as well, but technically you're not supposed to do it like 20 times, you know, because the director changed his mind. This is what we do in Previz, we do it for you. So technically, you know, at least the rough idea is the right idea, even if we know it changes always, you know, in the process. But that's the thing. It's just being able to start over and over again, and always with a fresh eye and new ideas, and not get too attached to your work, which is very difficult when you go so far into details in animation, when you spend like days and hours on the same shot. I've seen people like, you know, friends animator who are just like disgusted at some point because suddenly they work for 6 months and suddenly they hear that everything is cut from the edit. And it's like, wow, that's so tough. It's like, sometimes we lose sequences as well, but you know, we never spend 6 months on it.
So. Yeah. I think the it's like you're being higher in the chain of command, or at least working with people higher in the chain of command. So that makes you less vulnerable in that sense, that you don't risk suddenly losing months of it. Another thing I wanted to talk about, when I talked to Randy a few weeks ago, and he talked a lot about how when you move from animation and into Previz, you get to deal more with the storytelling of it, and it's about. He talked about coming from intention with Previz, whereas in an animation, your blocking can be very. You don't need to have it can be very superficial. It can be very like what's in the 2D space on the screen. It's like a clear silhouette. If the animation is technically is working fine, then you can be happy as an animator. But in Previz, you have to concern yourself with the story, and you have to go deeper into, which makes sense. It's like what you said about having more tools, and animation is just one part of it. In Previz, it's like a cinematography almost. Like you're really making film. So is that this? Was that the same feeling you had going into like pure Previz and supervising as well?
Yes, I see what you mean. It's like I've never been, that deep into animation, but I've been to the point where you're like animating toes for hours, and you're like, what am I doing? I mean, this is how I felt about it anyway. It's like you have to do it, but it's I was not very happy doing this, and yes, it's I see what you mean. It's like it's funny because when you're talking also about supervising, it's something that I've seen with friends also being supervisor in other disciplines, and it's when you're an artist, you're most of the time a little bit too focused because that's the way on your shots and your piece of work. And sometimes you completely lose, the scope of, the sequence or, what's going on in the movie, or also when does it takes place in the movie and why the character is supposed to be at this stage. And because you're not necessarily don't have all the information. Right. And in Previz, we are much more aware that it's not so much about acting most of the time. Sometimes yes, but most of the time it's not so much about acting. It's about really the flow of a sequence and, how things are going one after the other, and is the pacing right? Does it feel like the journey of the character is interesting enough, or too much fighting or whatsoever? And it's more like general things than details. And it's funny because I used to work with an animator that I like, that was super good as well, called Chris Olsen.
I know him.
And we worked together on Edge of Tomorrow. He was doing all the first tests of the aliens. They were called mimics. And at some point, it's funny because we didn't have like a proper design for it. We were too early in the process. So it was more like a chunk of body with like legs. And we knew that it was going to roll. We didn't know that we were going to have tentacles yet, but it's like he designed the animation and the shot with this crazy thing. It was more about feeling like, we need to see something moving really quickly without not clearly seeing what it is. And it's supposed to be like a death machine killing everyone with like tentacles coming from nowhere. And it's more about, as you said, like intentions instead of details. It's just more like, how does it feel when you watch the shot? And when you look at the model, it's like a blob. it's like 4 spikes for the legs and like a cylinder for the body, and that's it. And he managed to do some crazy stuff with it.
Nice.
And this is when you feel like it's more about, the flow, the way it moves through frame, and it's not something that it's tied to the camera. I mean, it's something that you play with the camera as well. So it's also depends on how you shoot it. Like the style of this movie was a lot like handheld camera, so it's a lot of shaking. So it's you don't animate the same way, I guess, if it's something like that, or if it's like a beautiful steady shot and you have times to see the animation. It's another layer. It's not like more complex. It's just different. Instead of focusing at 100% on one thing, you're just spreading your intention on also how does it feel if we are almost in the shadow, like how do we see it, do we have to. And it's funny because we had night sequence on this project and we were like, okay, we need some glowing stuff on this alien because otherwise we don't see it moving. And is it a good thing in terms of storytelling? How much do we want to see about his body, or is it just a shape moving through shadows? And we think about this stuff a lot early in the process. And I'm sure you have to deal with this kind of stuff later as well. But we have to design it, to choose. So that's the interesting part, I think.
Yeah. And then you get to pass it on to some animator who's like, it's all in the dark. Shit.
Exactly.
You can't see how much fingers.
Exactly. But that's funny because it's part of the thing. It's like, when we look at the previous and you're like, it's all in the dark.
Yeah.
We know it because we're designing the shot. So like, you don't even animate. You just don't care. And we know that the animator later will have to do it just in case at some point, you see some rim lights or whatsoever.
Yeah,
but in our case, it's just like, yeah, we don't see it, whatever.
No. And it's like you just have to, like you said, you just have to please the attention of the movie and what you need to convey. And if it has to be in the dark because you're building suspense or for whatever reason, then that's what you have to do. And then people down the pipeline, they just have to follow up, of course. So yeah, it's yeah. And so how long were you at third floor?
I think I spent 5 years, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then did you, I'm trying to segue into VFX in general as well. How did you, I know you said your third floor was a small team, and even though I never really got an inside look of it, it felt like it was like, it was very much a thing of its own. I think compared to all the big studios, like I know you guys work closely with Framestore. Or what was it? A daughter company of Framestore?
They had like a partnership when I was there that ended up like a year ago or something like that. And now Framestore has his own Previz department, and third floor is on its own.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, because obviously I'm a guy, so my experience of working in VFX, I didn't get. You see mainly guys in VFX, mainly men, but I also know that the experience from women working in VFX can vary quite a bit because depending on where you are. Did you always feel good at working at not necessarily third floor, but just in VFX in general?
I've been very lucky. Yeah, it's like. I know people who had troubles, and there will be always a place. So sometimes it's just a coincidence. You're next to someone that is not nice with you, and that's it. It's not a company thing. But I've been very lucky so far, and wherever I was, it's just it was never brought to the table. It's like you're just an animator, and that's it, and it doesn't matter that you're a woman or a man, and that's what I like about it. I was a little bit reluctant with, I mean, it's hard to say that, but I was not feeling super comfortable with the whole, you're a woman in the industry, talk about it, and did you experience things because, but it's because I've been lucky, and that, I never had a problem, and it doesn't mean that because I've been lucky, some people didn't, didn't have this chance. So, but for my part, and especially it's funny because we moved to third floor, and third floor, I don't think it's a choice. It's just the way it happened. It's like we had a lot of women at third floor because we are recruiting also a lot of young artists. And, now if you go into any animation school, it's like 50-50. We are getting more and more, women into the game as well. And a lot of supervisors have been women at the third floor. And there are most of them, some of them are at Framestore as well. Kaya, Michelle, I know a lot of women are supervisors, and I think so. For me, it was like, okay, that's normal, and I know it's not always like this, but yeah, I've been lucky, and I'm really happy because things are changing, and I'm teaching in schools as well, and I see that there is a lot of young ladies, and they start to be more and more confident about the fact that they can be supervisor as well. It's not just being an artist. It's like you have also a space to get higher and higher into the hierarchy, and that no one is going to go into your way technically. No. So that's good. And sometimes of course someone will make sometimes a joke or something like that, but nothing crazy bad, and it's we do joke as well. It's like it's not always on one side.
I think well, that's good to hear, and it's and of course I know that you can't speak for all women, and I don't have all stats or data either. So I guess we're just talking about experiences.
Yes.
But I've been teaching a bit as well, and I agree. It's nice to see that in the animation schools that it's 50-50. And I mean, like, not that it's not a general like tendency or anything, but I mean, most of the very talented people I've taught have been women for whatever reason. It's just like it's not my impression that there's any, that it has to do with obviously it doesn't have to do with gender at all, but it's not my impression that, it's my impression that now everybody wants to do whatever they want to do, and it seems like that's gonna show its way into leadership as well, like you said. And
I think so.
And you did quite a bit of supervising at third floor as well.
At the end, yes. No, not at the. I mean, I was very quickly. I've been put in a lead position, which was great because I could learn from the supervisor, but also learn to manage the team. And I was supervising only at the end, just before I left to go back to France. But yeah, and it's funny because it's something as well. You know, I've always. I had the chance to be supervising a little bit on work once on a big project. And it's funny because everyone was like, oh, it must have been like quite scary to suddenly be in a supervising role on a project like that. And a lot of people asked me if I was scared because I was a woman, and maybe people could judge me because, you know, I'm a woman and I'm on a big project. I don't know. And I never thought about that. I was really concerned about my age because I was like, I don't know, 30 something. And so, because, you know, your age is like, you count by experience. At some point you're 30, or like if you're working with people that are 45 or 50, yes, they have 20 more years, and you're never going to make up for that in like a click or whatsoever. And no one ever mentioned anything about my age or about my gender. Like, unknown supervisor, I work with people at ILM that were much older than me, and it was not a question. Maybe you know, I always wonder, like, if I failed, and maybe I could have been blamed for that, because you know, you have to be blamed for something, but it didn't happen. And I was I used to be more not upset, but, you know, scared by my non-experience at some position than my gender in general.
I think that's legit, and I think that in the sense that I think all of us are having, like, especially when we have to move into a new field, that it's like we have maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome, and am I good enough for all of that? I think that seems to come with it. Yeah, it's
funny. I had a talk about this today, and this famous imposter syndrome that I always have. It's like, you know, sometimes you're like, why am I? I'm a teacher now. Okay, you know, am I legit to teach to the students? Or it's really interesting, and yes, it never had anything to do with the gender, and it's because also no one ever made me feel that way, like, you know, that I was not good enough because I was a woman or anything like that. So that's great.
Yeah. It's my sense as well, and but obviously I'm asking because I don't have the lived experience, so I can only see what I've seen, and obviously you don't see a lot. So, but it's my sense as well that when you're on a show, on a production, everyone just wants the show to do well. So it's like there's no time to get hung up on things that don't matter, like if you're a man or a woman, or however you identify. It doesn't really matter. What matters is, like, are you capable of doing this? And then if you are, great, then that seems to be the norm, or at least that's what we all hope is the norm, right? So it's nice that to hear that as well. I saw on your LinkedIn, I tried to do a little bit of research, but your involvement in CNC. Can you explain that?
I don't know. The British comparison would be maybe the BFI or something like that.
Oh,
the British Film Institute. It's basically It's called the National Center for Cinema in France, and it's the public government part of the movie industry, because we have it gives a lot of support to the industry in general by supporting training companies, by investment funds and things like that. And so I've been for a few years now part of this as a so-called expert. Let's back to the imposter syndrome in my field to talk. You can submit like a project, and experts will examine this project and give you funds if they think that it's worth it. And it's in various different fields. You can have it like for scripts or for animation or for short films. And for my part, it's more like in the industry, like technical industry, and like if you're gonna find like a new pipeline or a new way of working, or if you hire people. So it's something between R&D and pipeline and technical stuff. And I'm part of this group of experts, and we examine projects, and we give funds, and we participate to the fact that the state, France, is supporting the industry.
Yeah. So do you see a lot of kind of cutting edge methods or technologies?
It's really interesting because you can see that everyone is trying to be creative and find new ways of doing things, which is really interesting, like new software. There is a lot of things happening with the open source move. Blender is super strong right now in France in animation because we have a lot of small studios, so it's a great way to get into animation if you have a studio, because it's free and you can participate to the development. It's been really interesting, and it's funny because I've been here also because at some point they needed to have parity in the expert group.
Oh, right.
So I was asked, for my resume, but also because I was a woman. So it was one of these moments where you're like, am I legitimate to do this, or is it just because they need 50-50 in the audience to look good? And at some point you have to admit that you need to be the first round, and then afterwards it will be normal for everyone, and it's fine if I'm only half here because of my experience, and half here because just I'm a woman. If I do my job properly, at least the next generation they won't have this question to be asked. So
yeah, I think that's a good point. It also that being aware that's just, if you want change to happen, you have to help it a bit. And
exactly,
and that's it's not always going to be like clear cut perfect, and that's just how it's going to be. And I think like in any of life's, however you engage with people, that it's always better when there's like a close to 50-50. It's just, everyone is just nicer. I think.
Yes. But I agree with you. Sometimes it's tricky because I'm not a big fan of the 50-50, because we need to be 50-50. Like at some points it gets a little bit stupid. It's like numbers. So and I think talent is talent, and you can find it everywhere. And it's more about having the good team. And if at some point this team is like 70% male and 30% female, that's fine, as long as it makes sense. There is no need to do math on everything. And right now it's a bit like that, which sometimes I'm a bit annoyed by that, because I feel like, okay, it's fine if you don't have your 50-50, just do like 40-60 and everyone will be happy. But they want to get those numbers, because then they can put it on the wall and say, hey, 50-50.
No, I agree. It becomes a little bit more about numbers and politics, and not about the actual team. It's a balancing act, it seems.
Because I think I've seen a lot of young talented men artists that don't get the job because at some point we need to hire more women, and I'm like, it's not fair. They don't have to pay because back in the days 20 years ago it was only men in the job. So it's I feel like it's gonna get better and better, and at some point no one will ever ask this question again, and that would be great because we won't have to. But we can say the same with color, race, whatsoever. It's just a big thing right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's almost like a pendulum. It swings out a lot, and then hopefully it'll steady itself along the way. I don't know. You also you seem to, so you have a lot to do with like new technologies and new projects or innovation in general, but also teaching. Do you like what do you try to pass on to this new generation coming up while seeing what all this stuff that they're trying to do? Is there anything that you would have liked to know when you were in their shoes?
First of all, I'm trying to tell them that there is, previs and layout is a thing. You can live with it. It's like, you can become like a previs artist and get a life. It's like, it's fine. I didn't know that you could just do that for a living when I was a student. And layout was always this, the department that, is not interesting for anyone. And I thought that it was a shame at some point, because it's, in animation, it always looked like, okay, you're not good enough to be an animator, so you're going to go into the layout department. And it's so much not about that. So that's, first of all, this is what I say. And then I'm saying that what I'm trying to say is it's about filmmaking or animation. If you do animation, it's not about software. It's not about, it's not about techniques and I'm using the latest plugin and so I'm going to get better. I need to know everything, or it's just about the craft, and the craft used to be, 2D animation, and it used to be filmmaking. And because in schools, people tend to get completely crazy about softwares and am I learning the right thing at the right time? We need to change. We need to go to this. I mean, I used 3ds Max, and then I learned Maya, and then I learned Motion Builder and Unity and Unreal. And it's like, yeah, whatever. It's just going to be another software, and you're going to have controllers, and you're going to put keys, and there will be a graph editor, and that's it. And it's so much not about that, and about, just watch movies, watch animated cartoons, and you need to have a great culture of things and educate your mind and your brain and what you're looking at, and forget about the computer a little bit. Get outside, just watch stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree. There'll always be a new fancy thing that we have to figure out, and we will. It's fine. But exactly. but you need to build that intuition of what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. Because for instance, I'm working in a company in France called Les Androïds Associésand, and they decided to have a motion builder pipeline because they are coming from motion capture, and it made much more sense for Previz for them to be in this kind of software. And I was like, at first, I need to learn something new, and blah, blah, blah. And then you realize that it's not about that. And I've seen some, students coming to the office and saying, I don't want to learn a new software. I just want to stay in Maya, so I'm not going to try to get the job or whatever. And you're like, it's such a shame, because it's not going to damage anything. It's not, you're not going to unlearn Maya because you're learning something new. And it's not about those skills, because it changes so quickly, as you said. Like suddenly everyone wants to go to real time, and then you're like, okay, is my career completely ruined, or no? It's just adapt. It's just about being versatile and and that's what we want to do, to be in Previz as well, because it's constantly new toys to play with, like virtual cameras, motion capture, and it's not about being stuck into one mindset, like this is how I do it and that's it. And you need to change all the time, and some people like it and some people just don't like it at all.
Yeah. So I was going to ask how you prepare them for a production, so that I think you just answered that. I just trying to be versatile and adaptive, I guess.
I guess so, because I think our industry is getting more and more specialized. So we tend to be, even at school, to suddenly be into a tunnel. Like when I used to be at school, we used to be generalists. So you would graduate into, like, you're supposed to be like a digital director or whatsoever, if that means anything. So you could do anything. You were better at things than other, but technically you have learned everything. And now they're getting more and more specialized, so they don't know anything about lighting if they do animation or things like that. And it's complicated for us when we hire previs artists because we want them to be able to do a little bit of everything. And I try to tell them to keep their mind open because I found it so early to do a choice like that. I discovered Previz like 3 years after I started to work. And sometimes, I wasn't mature enough as well to decide if I was going to do animation or modeling or lighting. I had ideas like I like animation a little bit more, but you never know, things can change. So just keep this mind open as much as you can because you never know. And you don't want to be stuck into something that you realize like 10 years after that you don't really like.
Yeah, or things may change after 10 years as well.
Yes.
So if you continuously practicing keeping your mind open and adapting to new things and new ideas pop up, are you don't have to reveal it here if you have plans for something else, but I'm just curious, are you still super enjoying what you do now? Do you have ideas about going into different like areas of filmmaking or storytelling, or?
I have plans actually. I can't talk about it now, but yeah, yeah, it's a bit too early. But yeah, I'm super excited about the whole real-time thing. I've done the Unreal Fellowship program recently, a few months ago. So I had the opportunity to learn the software properly and do like a short film, and it just opens something completely different. I love games as well, so it's like I like the way that suddenly we can bridge filmmaking and game in the game industry and mix those people as well, and instead of being stuck into like, oh, those game people, we don't talk to them, and there is a film people, and now things are a little bit more crossing each other, and I think that's really good for everyone. Definitely. And I think I just want bridges. It's like everyone tends to be a little bit more on this side, and you feel like no, there is so much cool things to take from the way they do cinematics in game, for instance, because it's also storytelling. And they have a completely different mindset. They don't have the same culture, but now it's like game and Hollywood is the same. They are crossing each other. So I want this bridge to happen and to mix people a little bit more, and that's why I think it's really interesting. This podcast that you're doing is just to help people learning about different things and connect together, especially with those days where we have been stuck in our home. It's so important, I think, to just open our mind a little bit more to different things.
No, I'm glad you say that, and I totally agree. I think when I heard a few years ago, when I first heard that the game industry was like way bigger than the movie industry in terms of how much money is made, it made me happy because it's like that means that the movie industry can't ignore gaming anymore, and you see now how they're kind of starting to blend, and everyone is getting inspired by everyone, and also because both movie makers and game makers, they have to cater to similar demographics now.
Exactly.
It's a really cool time to just try out things, and like you said, like in your case, maybe you find something that you had no idea that you're really good at, and then you can build on that. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, it sounds really exciting with your. Maybe we'll have another catch up in like 6 months, and you can tell us more.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Is there anything that you think that we should add on to this that I didn't get to ask you?
Oh no, I mean it's been wonderful to speak with you about everything, and to have this opportunity to talk about Previz, because as you said, it's not always seen in a very nice way from animators, but you should try it. Like animators should try it, and the opposite as well. It's like it's the same. It's so nice when we are working in Previz to have suddenly strong animators joining, because they can teach us a lot of things and they have a different mindset, and that's what I like about it as well, is when things blend and suddenly you learn from each other, and they give you their insight about the way they think about the shots, and you're like, okay, maybe I need to grab a little bit of this to get better as well, and yes. So No, it's been really fun.
Yeah. It was great to talk, and yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Margaux.
No,
It was
you're
great.
welcome, Ben. Thank you so much to you.
Okay.